on the Virtual Shelling Network. We are here on Sanibel. There are dolphins right in the background here as I just started recording, so I will hold it there for a second to see if you can see them pop up. It is a beautiful, very chilly morning here, and we are going to do a fun little beach walk, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about red tide. Unfortunately, red tide is back this year, and we are dealing with some of the effects of that here on the beach. So I hope you guys can see. It's super bright out here this morning as the sun's just coming up. It's a little bit breezy, it's a little bit chilly, I'm a little bit bundled up, but hopefully you can see the dolphin there. Here comes some pelicans flying. I love the wildlife. Remember, don't forget to look up, right? Even though we always want to look down and we always want to be shelling, don't forget to look up and check out the water and check out the wildlife, because there's a lot of it on this island. So we're gonna get to shelling, and my husband was not here 10 seconds and found a beautiful piece of sea glass. I tell you, he can find sea glass. He's just got the eye for it. Some people just have the eye. Look how beautifully frosted and rounded this piece is. So that is the first little treasure that we found today, and we are gonna get to finding some more. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay guys, before we get started, we're gonna come and check out a little bit of dolphin action, because who doesn't appreciate some dolphins, right? And it looks like they might be feeding or playing, so I'm gonna come down here to the water so you guys can see, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of action from them. Let me zoom in just a little bit. There they are, right there in the middle. Ooh, that water's chilly. It is a chilly day here. We got into the 40s last night, which is pretty chilly for here in Southwest Florida. And we're not used to that. We're not used to those cold temperatures. There they are, they're going down. Well, maybe we will see them again. So we've got the sun coming up here on the island, and we are gonna be checking out the beach. Unfortunately, this is what red tide looks like. So for those of you who don't know what red tide is, it is a naturally occurring bacteria and algae in the water. So it is natural, it is not caused by any specific thing, but what happens is because of nutrients in the water, such as fertilizers, pesticides, runoff from the properties, it causes the bacteria to bloom, and it disrupts the water quality. And what happens as a result is you get a ton of wash up of dead sea life. So things to remember with red tide being present, and you guys can go to Fish and Wildlife, myfwc.com, to learn more about the areas that are affected by red tide. So if you're planning on coming here on vacation and you're not really sure if, you know, how the red tide is, you can always see the measurements there. The thing about red tide is when it gets severe enough, it can affect your breathing. If you have asthma, or if you have really sensitive lungs or upper respiratory sensitivities, it can cause some coughing and a scratchy throat and that type of thing. And you also want to make sure that you're careful in the water. I would recommend not bringing your dog to the beach unless you know your dog is going to behave with you and not be sniffing around, licking things, eating things, because it can be toxic to dogs. Here's a flame box crab claw that's really cool. I love crab claws to put them in a bowl or on a display. And the flame box crab are, they're very colorful. They're bright red. They look like flames, which is why they get that name. So here's the thing with red tide, right? It's not good for the water. It's definitely not something that we are excited about. However, it can be kind of fun to wash up some beach treasures. So we're gonna kind of check out this rack line here. The tide is going out, and make sure that you have beach shoes on, because especially as the red tide worsens or gets prolonged and more sea life and more fish wash ashore, you've got some sea urchins that have washed up here. You've got some fish that are starting to decay. You don't want to step on sea urchins, spine. Here's another crab claw. This is a stone crab claw. And you just don't want to step on a fish bone or anything sharp. I mean, really, you should always be wearing some type of beach shoes if you're going to be shelling. It's just good to protect your feet, especially when there's bacteria known to be in the water, because if you step on something and you puncture your foot, you can get an infection pretty easily. So make sure you've got some good beach shoes. I'm wearing Fit Kicks. I do like them. Keens are also great beach shoes as well, if you're looking for a brand with a little more support in the arch. So Keens, these are more kind of like, Fit Kicks are more kind of like ballet slippers. They don't have a whole lot of support. They're just kind of protection for your feet, almost like a water sock. Hold on, I'm trying to get all of this little seaweed off of this cute little sea whip. So these little sea whips grow and attach themselves to shells, and they make such cute little displays, either in a shell bowl or if you glue them onto a canvas, if you're making like a picture. So always just be really mindful. The other thing too is when I get home, here's another flame box crab claw. When I get home, all of the shells that come from beaches with red tide always get bleached. And it doesn't really matter what shells they are, they all get dunked in the bleach bath, at least for a diluted bleach for 10 minutes. That's everything, because you want to make sure you get that bacteria off of your shells and your sea life. Oh, this looks like it was a whole angel wing. And it looks like somebody may have stepped on it. Oh, that's sad. I hate to see that. Here's another little sea urchin. So the majority of the sea life that's going to be washed up during red tide is not going to be alive. When in doubt, check the spines. You want to see if they're moving. You want to kind of bend them and see if they easily move. You can kind of touch the mouth a little bit and see if it goes back. This isn't moving at all, so I know this one is no longer alive. I also, and I've said this before, I don't collect a bunch of sea urchins. I used to, but they're so hard to clean. The only time I'll really take one home is if it's already cleaned out. Here's a little speckled crab here that washed up. I know a lot of people want to take the crab shell, but this little guy is fully loaded with all of his guts inside, and he will be very stinky. So if you want to know what a dead crab smells like, it's really gross. Just know that it's super, super gross. So try to make sure they're already cleaned out for you. And if they're not, I would highly recommend cleaning them out at the beach. So you're not taking them home and having a super, super stinky mess. What I was saying about sea urchins is they're just very hard to clean. You have to let them dry out completely, which can take some time. Then you've got to get the animal out without breaking the shell. Then you've got to get all the spines out. Then you have to preserve them. I usually use Elmer's glue, similar to what I would use for sand dollars, just to make sure that they're given a little bit of stability, make their shell a little bit stronger. Here's a little, oh, it's a little tiny one. All right, husband just walked up to me with this beautiful flat scallop. Look how pretty it is. And it's just about perfect. Look at the color on that. That is so pretty. I love flat scallops. We hardly ever find them whole. They're another shell that we usually find broken a lot of the time. But here is that little baby sea urchin. How cute. He's got a big mouth for a little guy. And it's so sad that he didn't make it, but this is just an example of how teeny tiny they can get. Super small. And we're gonna see what else we can find. Here is another crab claw. Looks like it could be from a speckled crab, maybe. Just super fun to have their claws. And here, over here, we have a horseshoe crab. Horseshoe crabs are one of the oldest species on the planet that are still alive, that are not yet extinct. They were alive when the dinosaurs were alive. Or they were actually alive before the dinosaurs were alive. Like 450 billion years. I mean, crazy, right? So horseshoe crabs are really heavy because they've got a lot of guts inside, right? So if you really are dying to take the shell, you've got to clean it out. And one of the ways to do that is you've got to separate the shell, okay, if you can see the shell here, from all of the guts inside. And I usually don't take the time to do that just because it's kind of gross and kind of stinky and whatever, but this is kind of what you would do, is you would pull all this out and then you would have the empty shell and you would be able to take that home with you. But don't take the whole thing if it's got the guts, because it's gonna stink so bad. And here it looks like we've got a little starfish that washed up, and we're gonna check and see if he's alive, because you always need to check with starfish, with sand dollars, and it doesn't appear like he is alive at all. You can see I'm kind of moving his legs, and his legs aren't moving at all. We're gonna go get him wet to see. Alright, so I just got him wet a little bit, and I'm just investigating to see if any of his little legs are moving. And you know, I'm not quite convinced that this little guy is deceased. Did you guys see how he kind of moved his legs up here? Let me show you up here. Right here. If I touch his legs, you see how they retracted in? Okay, so I'm not convinced that this little guy, you see that? He's still alive. So he might not be alive for long because I just tossed him back right there. He might not be alive for long because of red tide, but we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. So that's a great example of, just because you find kind of a mangled starfish, it doesn't mean they're not alive, right? If they're completely hard and dried out, then yeah, they're dead. But if they're still kind of moist and, you know, you're not sure when they washed up, this is the rack line from the high tide, the most recent. So he could have just washed up and then a little bit dried out. So when in doubt, put them back. Take a picture if you want to take a picture, but do not take something if you are not 100% sure that it is no longer alive, okay? Super important, be a good sheller. I know that sometimes you find that, you know, big conch or a sand dollar and you've never found one before and you're all excited, but if you are not 100% sure that that animal is no longer alive, then put it back and give it a shot to live. Here's a really fun piece of sponge. So I'm working on trying to find a way to preserve some sponges for you guys to ship out in the beach treasure boxes. So I'm experimenting right now to see what I can do. So you guys might be getting some fun little sponges, and I might be making some of them available on my website soon. Here's another reason why I don't like to bring dogs to the beach. during a wash up like this, not only do we have dead fish, but we've got some pieces. This is a cow hoof or maybe a pig hoof. I don't know. Looks like maybe a cow hoof. And these are bones and things that wash up from crab traps. So what happens is they'll take a leg from a goat or a pig or a cow, and they put it in the crab trap as bait for the crabs. So the crabs go in and they eat the bait, and then they can't get out, and that's how they get their crabs. But then the bones or the hoofs fall out of the trap and wash up on the beach. And you don't want your dog to grab that. Look at this fun piece of driftwood. This is really pretty. You don't want your dog to grab that really fast and put it in its mouth, especially because it's been soaking in potentially toxic water, right? Look how pretty this little crab claw is here. I love them. I love making their little pinchers go. It's sad that they look at the little can you guys see the little purple? Let's see if I can zoom in here. The little purple tip on that claw is super pretty. It's sad that a lot of these creatures don't make it, but it's nice to be able to appreciate them, you know, instead of just having them be garbage on the beach, right? We take them home and we consider them treasures, and we appreciate them and use them for education, for conservation of sea life. So it's always good to just know that when you take something that's no longer alive, that you're still respecting the creature and appreciating it for what it is. Here's a really pretty turkey wing. And here's another little urchin here. And again, like, if you're not sure, see how his mouth just closed? Did you guys see that? So this little urchin is still alive. Okay, he's might not be alive for long. If you move his spines, they're not easily moving, they're not easily bending or falling off. I don't know if you'll really see the spines move very much. So sometimes when they get a little dried out or they're not super well, you see his mouth is clenched shut again. So again, when in doubt, we're gonna take him back to the water. I know we can't save them all, but we can save one little starfish and one little sea urchin. We'll roll him back in right there. Here's a little pufferfish. It's so sad to see these creatures washed up. But this is, there was one day I didn't have beach shoes on and I wasn't paying attention, and I kicked one of these fish. I'll try to get them so I don't. And these have spines. Can you guys see? Can you guys see the spines here? These are extremely sharp, like super sharp, and I kicked one and I was bleeding so bad. So this is another reason why you want to make sure that you've got some foot protection on, because there are some very sharp shells, fish bones, that you just might not see as you're walking along. Here's another turkey wing. I love turkey wings. How pretty. I mean, they're just such a beautiful shell, and they look exactly like a turkey wing, right? That's one shell I've never found a bivalve, a whole bivalve of a turkey wing. I'd love to find an intact turkey wing. That would be so fun. So it is really fun to just investigate the rack lines and check out, you know, the sea life that gets washed up. Just remember, when it's red tide, again, you just want to be mindful of your sanitation. You know, I mean, if you have any type of injury, cuts, paper cuts, if your skin health is not good, if you have severely dry skin, if you don't take care of the skin on your hands and feet, you have micro cuts on your skin, you don't want to be in the water, because you don't want to introduce that bacteria into your body, because you can really get an infection. So that's why, as an esthetician, and a lot of you are my clients and my customers, that I preach skincare, not just for your face, but for your whole body, to ensure that you are being protected against bacteria and viruses and funguses and all of those things. So here looks like a little, focus. Here looks like a little leopard crab that somebody took the shell to, but this is what would be left over if you just wanted the shell. If you just want the shell on top, okay, and you're gonna leave everything else, that's what it would look like. Okay, you wanna leave all of this other stuff. And I remember, I only take crab claws if they're empty. So crab claws contain the meat as well, and for those of you who eat crab claws, you know that. But crab claws contain meat as well, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see on video, but this one is hollow, and you can look in there and just see some sand. So I can see that it's completely hollow all through there. So I know that this one is empty, and it's okay for me to take home, and it's not gonna be super stinky. Oh, it's a heart. Really pretty pen shell when you find them intact like this, and you open them up. They make a beautiful heart. Isn't that so pretty? I love that. So many big fish. So tide is going out. We're gonna have a fresh rack line here. We're gonna have a high tide rack line here, and then we're gonna have another rack line, kind of two of them, that are fun to explore also. So it just kind of depends on, like up here, this is kind of the older rack line. So you can kind of investigate up here too, and you guys know that I love looking for beach treasures. Like, I love shelling and I love finding shells, but you know, sometimes the beach treasures that you can find are just as fun, right? It's not always about the actual seashells, but about the crab claws, and maybe you find a mermaid's purse, or the fun little, you know, sponges that you can find. And again, I'm trying to find a way to preserve these so they're not like super stinky, because let me tell you, they are super, super stinky. Looks like here's a buttercup. I love buttercups. Beautiful. Look at that. So there are really fun shells as well. But we just like to find the sea whips and maybe an egg casing or driftwood. There's just so many other beach treasures besides just seashells that you can look for and find. And up in a junky rack line, I call it like beach junk, beach trash, all this stuff that comes in and gets washed up, that's where you're gonna have the best chance of finding all those fun things. Like here's a crab shell, and it's all cleaned out. Look at that. And that's a perfect cleaned out crab shell for you to take home. And again, I mean, normally I wouldn't bleach every single thing, but everything is gonna get bleached at least for a couple minutes, just to make sure that the bacteria is out of it. Just wanna make sure it's sanitary. And you have to do what you're comfortable with, guys. Like, listen, there's a lot of people that are like, there's red tide, why are you at the beach? Why are you shelling? You know, whatever. Listen, I understand. I mean, I could say the same thing about people smoking, right? Smoking is bad for your lungs. Why do you do it? People do it anyway. I'm always very careful. This is a big crab claw here. Oh, it is. Look at this one. It's a big stone crab claw. Get the seaweed off of that. They're so fun to put so I can focus. You guys can see this one's hollow. It's completely emptied out, so it's perfect to take home. Got a little barnacle here too, growing on there. So here's the thing, this crab was deceased for a while. And you know how I know that? Because this claw can't close with that barnacle right there. So if this crab was alive, the barnacle wouldn't have been able to adhere there, because the crab would have been opening and closing his claw at that hinge. So you know, because of the barnacle there, that the barnacle latched onto the crab claw after the crab was deceased. So that's kind of a fun little CSI forensics, beach forensics we'll call it, for you. But you guys, if you have asthma, or you're sensitive in your upper respiratory, or the red tide is high, okay, we're not really in the high zone just yet, I know you wouldn't know that with all the dead fish. But you have to remember too that the red tide could be really bad further out and the fish are all just washing up. Okay, so, but use your judgment for yourself. Whatever you feel is what you need to do, okay? To be safe, to keep your family safe. Here's another crab, but this guy still has all of his body parts. So we're not gonna take him, but he does have a really cool spotted shell, so that would be really pretty. It is chilly out here today, you guys, which is another reason it's chilly and it's breezy. So on a day like this is a better day to come out during a red tide because the air is going to be more clean with the breeze and it's not going to be as stinky as it is if it was hot. So that's a good thing. This is one of those spider crabs. So spider crabs are really cool if you ever see one alive. They literally look like giant spiders, but they're not like the most pretty crab to find. Let me try to get this seaweed off with my hand here. They're not the most pretty crab. They don't really have a color. They're just kind of brown. They're not like, you know, they're not the most charming, cute crabs ever. But they are still fun. They're still a treasure. If you find a spider crab shell, they are kind of cool to have in your little sea life beach treasure collection. And we're getting into some good stuff here. So you guys can see that there's some shell piles up here, and we've got a lot of stuff to look through, a lot of seaweed to look through. I'm not really getting down and you know, kind of mulling through it like I normally would, just because I'm trying not to touch a whole lot if I can help it. But this is a great place to look for beach treasures. Remember guys, it's not all about the shells. I know we all love shells, but beach treasures are just so fun to find. Like, look at this awesome piece of driftwood. You know, I mean, this is so pretty. Just to like sit on your table, you could glue some shells to it. You could put a crab shell or a starfish on there. Just super, super pretty. I don't always collect all the driftwood. Like, look at this beautiful piece. Although I did haul home 2 fairly decent sized pieces the other day. When we came out, I was like, oh my gosh, and my arm was like killing me. They were so heavy. But here's the thing with driftwood is it will fill up your shell bag really quickly. So if you either have 2 shell bags, which I usually will have a spare with me, my husband has it in his backpack, or you can bring like just a Publix bag, like a grocery bag for specifically your driftwood. I wouldn't recommend putting your special treasures in there because if you happen to get a hole in it, then you don't want to lose your shells, and that's happened to me so many times, which is why I created my shell bags. But you can certainly throw in some driftwood just so you don't fill up your shell bag super quickly. So that's a little tip for you too. Look at this piece of driftwood. It looks like deer antlers. Isn't that so cool? So if you wanted like a, I don't know, if you were making some type of like little antler like thing for Christmas, that would be like such a cute little thing to hang some like ornaments on or something. I might have to take that with us and do something fun with it. Super fun. Here is a great example of a sea urchin that lost all of its spines. Okay, so all of the spines have fallen off. So this is what your end sea urchin is going to look like. So you've got the purple, you've got the pattern, but it still has the animal inside. Now, let me see if I can, I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but we're gonna give it a go. Okay, let's see. You can take a shell. You're gonna have to find something small and something that is a little bit flat and a little bit sharp, like this. And I'm gonna attempt to hold the phone on my knee. This is probably not gonna work, but we're gonna try it anyway. Okay, so you're gonna take your urchin, and this works a lot better if they're super dried out, and then you're gonna take your shell and very carefully you're gonna kind of poke
carefully, because listen, if you go at this too hard, you're gonna break the shell, and then the whole thing's over, right? And so I'm just poking, you guys can see, and I'm just kind of poking, so I'm getting all of that loose. And that's like the kind of the main body, if you will, of the urchin, okay? And then obviously I'm out here at the beach, so this is gonna be a little bit tricky, but tweezers are your friend. So if you can see, his little mouth is here, and it's, if you can hear it shaking, sometimes you can shake it out, but you're gonna wanna take tweezers and try to pull it out. I don't have tweezers, so I'm gonna do my best to just break it up inside. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna take this out. Whole thing is out, okay? And now you have your empty shell. So this is a completely cleaned out sea urchin. No spines, nothing on the inside, completely hollow. It does need to dry out a little bit more, because there is gonna be a little bit of, like right here, you can see this tissue that is still not completely dried out yet. If you want to bleach your urchins, listen closely, they will bleach out, okay? So if I put this in bleach for too long, it'll be pretty. It's gonna be a really light purple, like you'll still see the dark purple here, but these light purple segments will bleach out. It'll be pretty, but it's not gonna look natural. So if you're gonna bleach this, I would literally leave it in a diluted, like maybe like a 10 to 20% bleach solution for like 10 to 15 minutes to kill the bacteria, and then rinse really well. Otherwise, if you leave it in too long, it will bleach out. It'll still be a little bit purple, but it will bleach a lot. So just be mindful of that. So that is how you would be cleaning out your urchins. And it does take quite a bit of time to get the spines off. I think getting the spines off is one of the hardest parts. Getting the spines off and getting that mouthpiece out here without breaking the urchin shell is really tough. And I think something just caught my eye here. Speaking of purple, I think I see part of a sea whip here. I'll try to pull it out. So sea whips are fun. They're all different. So sometimes they have the purple, so you can see like the thick purple piece here. And then other times they're not purple. Get that little piece of seaweed off here to make it look a little bit prettier. There you go. And then they usually attach themselves to a shell or a little piece of a shell. So that's super fun. Yep. A little sea whip. Sea whips are not something that, well, they're not something I find super commonly. Sometimes after a storm, when there's a big wash up, there'll be a bunch of them. And you can find them in different colors too. I found a yellow one at one point that was really pretty. I think the yellow ones are more on the Atlantic coast. Then here we have more of the purple ones on the Gulf Coast. And this looks like another little crab shell here. So we're gonna look in and make sure that it's empty. Yep, it looks completely empty in there. So that'll be another fun little treasure of a stone crab claw. And it is stone crab season, so everybody loves to go to restaurants and get those yummy stone crab claws. Here is a pretty calico clam here. And I will tell you too, just a quick note, I'm not a seafood eater. I don't eat any seafood, but my husband does. And just a quick tip, during red tide, just be really careful of where you're getting your seafood from, because you don't want to eat anything that was caught. You know, if you're gonna go fishing while you're here, that's fine, but I wouldn't keep and eat any of the fish that you catch during red tide, because they can have the bacteria in there. So just keep that in mind too. Ooh, look at this one as I almost slip in the sand. Look at this big sea whip. Wow. So I usually find like little ones, like I just showed you. But this one, woo, look how pretty. And it's all purple. And it's so pretty. And stay tuned, because once I get all of my treasures cleaned up, I'm gonna be starting to add them to my website for purchase. And if you are a Beach Treasure Box subscriber, you will be able to add them to your box. So So, you know, whatever I put in the boxes each month, if you're like, oh man, I really want a sand dollar, or I really want a crab claw, or I really want a sea whip, you can add that to your box. So that way you'll be kind of personalizing or customizing your box, if you will. So that's something that'll be a fun little feature too. So stay tuned for that. You guys know me, I love scallops. And you can always, look how pretty this one is. I feel like you can always find pretty scallops. So when people say that they come to the beach and they're like, oh, I couldn't find any shells, I don't know what they were looking for or where they were looking, because there's always beautiful scallops. This is a really cool piece of driftwood. That is really cool. I love that one. I might have to take that. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a little bit heavy to truck home, but... Another tip too is, like, if you have a little backpack, sometimes I'll bring like just a mini backpack, not a big one, but like one of those little, I don't know, you know what I mean? They're like a backpack, only they're tiny. And you could always bring that too and use that like specifically for driftwood or larger shells, cockle shells, you know, things that you really don't want to have them take up space in your shell bag. Because that's something for me that I run into a lot, is I tend to, you know, fill my shell bag with all of these larger items, and then I run out of space for other things. Or just bring 2 shell bags, you know. Sometimes I'll bring 2 shell bags, one for my sea life that I find, my delicates, my crab shells, my sea whips, and then I'll bring a separate one for my seashells and driftwood and like heavier, more durable items. So here is another example of a sea urchin. All the spines are almost off. So, and I always try to wear gloves, even just like a latex glove when I'm cleaning these, just because sometimes the spines are sharp, and if they're on there really well, you don't want to have them like cut your hand. So that's what it would look like clean. And then this little guy has a little creature in there too. So you would do the same thing. You would find a little shell and you would get that little creature out. And then you would have a nice little sea urchin to put in a bowl, or you could make an ornament, or whatever you want to do. Okay guys, so we were up here checking out this high rack line. And so now we're gonna go and we're gonna kind of check out the fresh rack line, because the tide is going out. And we're gonna see what was left behind by the waves and see if we can find any fun little shells here. Here's a little buttercup. I love buttercups. Ooh, and here's a really pretty Indian boat or slipper shell. Super pretty, look how pretty. And then right next to it, look at this kitten paw. It is like the brightest kitten paw I've like ever seen. Oh my gosh, look at that. Holy moly. Don't forget about the common shells too, guys. Like, I know everybody wants the horse conchs and the tulips, but don't forget about the more common shells that are beautiful for a shell display, that are much more abundant. So let's just say that you want to make one of those Christmas trees, you know, like the styrofoam Christmas trees. I mean, your best friend is going to be kitten paws. They make a wonderful, and not only are they the appropriate shape, but they're such a fun color too to put around your Christmas tree. Coquinas are another one that are super great for that. Scallops, I mean, you can always find scallops. And here's the thing that people forget, right? You forget that when you're doing a project, and for those of you that are crafters, you know what I'm saying is true. You know, look at this cardita, beautiful. This is another completely overlooked common shell. You can find a ton of them, and they're so pretty. They're so pretty. I mean, the shell isn't that much prettier than that, guys. But you guys will know that it is true that when you're doing a craft project and covering something with seashells, doesn't matter if it's a shell mirror, a picture frame, a shell tree, you don't even realize how many shells you need. Like, you need a ton of shells. Like, I can't give you a number, but I would guess to make like a decent sized like Christmas tree, you would need probably like 200 shells. That's a ton of shells, right? Oh, look what we got here. This is a little calico or leopard crab. Let's see if he's alive or not. Oh, I think he is alive. Are you alive? Come on. I know it's cold. I know you're huddled down there. Hi. Look how cute. I know, buddy. I woke you up, but I wanted to make sure that you were good. I wanted to make sure that you were okay. Look how cute he is. Oh, I know. You're going to try to pinch me. I know. You're going to try to pinch me. Look how cute, you guys. Hi. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. We'll let you go. Look how cute. He knows where he's going. So hopefully that little guy makes it, because he is super cute. You're almost there, buddy. Here comes the water for you. It's coming up. How cute is he, you guys? Whoop. There you go. They are just such a pretty crab. All right, we'll let him go. And what I was telling you guys was that sometimes you don't realize how many shells you need for a project. And you'll be very happy when you have been able to collect 200 scallops or 200 carditas or 200 kitten paws, because you'll be able to complete that project so much easier and more quickly. So let's just see what we've got up here. You guys, look at this ginormous fish. I have no idea what it is. I'm not much of a fish guru. I don't know if that's a grouper. I guess I would guess, if I had to guess, it was a grouper, because they get like really big. But I'll put my foot next to it so you guys can see how ginormous this fish is. It's just really sad that you know, all these fish are dying. It's just sad to me. But we go through red tide every year, so I mean, if you vacation down here, regardless if it's in the winter, if it's in the summer, you always run the risk of coming down during a red tide. So just know that there's no way for anybody to predict when the red tide will bloom or be here. And unfortunately, sometimes, oh, is this a little operculum right here? A little trapdoor. You know, sometimes, unfortunately, it might be occurring, you know, during your trip. And that stinks, but it's not anything anybody can predict. It used to be that red tide was pretty much only in the summer when the water was really warm. Look at the little teeth on this. I don't know, is this a barracuda? I don't know, somebody with some fish knowledge will be able to probably tell me. It's got some spots right here. And then look at the teeth. Look at the teeth on that thing. Oh my gosh. That's some serious, you know, chompers. But if you guys can see, I don't know if that's a barracuda. I don't know. Somebody will be able to tell me. I'll find out, and then if I can find out, I will edit the video. Oh, here's a little sea tree. I love these. These don't have the purple. They're a different species than the sea whips, but they're so fun to craft with and use as beach decor. And here's some more casualties. But what I was saying is just, you know, it sucks if it's kind of like a hurricane, right? Like if you want to come to Florida anytime during hurricane season, like nobody can predict, you know, if there's going to be a hurricane when you are here. So it's unfortunate, but if it happens when you're here, you have to make the best of it, right? You have to come out here if it's safe to do so and if you're comfortable to do so. And if not, guys, Sanibel offers so many amazing things. There's bike trails, there's Ding Darling Wildlife Preserve, there's an amazing seashell museum. They have a brand new aquarium It's so fun. There's so many things to do if you can't get to the beach. You can also drive to another beach, right? So you can go down to Marco, you can take a tour, you can go on a shell tour. Typically red tide is very localized, so occasionally it'll be everywhere along the coast, but right now I think it's just isolated to the Sanibel area, so you can always drive and take a shell tour down off of Marco to get some shelling and beach time. And you guys know from the tours that you've done with me that there are some amazing shells to be found down there too. This looks like a little blue crab claw. Yep, look at that. Look at the blue. Let's see if I can get the color. Look at the color on that crab shell. Wow, so pretty. Let's make sure it's empty. Yep, it looks empty in there. So that's a keeper. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this beach walk. It is really sad to see a lot of the carnage as a result of the red tide, but at the same time, it's really fun to check out that rack line and the wash up and see the awesome beach treasures we can find other than just shells. So I hope you had a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for being a Virtual Shelling Network member. Until next time, have a shell-tastic day, and I will see you again soon. Bye!